So thanks for joining me tonight, this Tuesday. I hope you're all having a good start to your week. Today I wanted to talk about authenticity, and this is a subject that has been coming up a lot in conversations, in with friends, in some of the groups that I run, just running into a lot of conversations around this concept around authenticity. And for those of you who have been following the other talks here on my page that I've had, as I've been interviewing the different speakers from TEDx, Cherry Creek Women, so many of these conversations are centered around or hold an aspect of this idea around authenticity. And my own talk was very central around this subject of authenticity, and centered around the story of my natural hair, of coming to appreciate and love my natural hair. What I was really trying to get to in that talk, and what I hope that people really resonated with, was understanding the risk it takes to be authentic. There are real risks. There is a cost that is present for choosing to be authentic. And when we think about those risks, is there a conversation or is there another thought about how we are creating or adding to, right? Are we creating safety for people to be whole, to be authentic? How are we operating in our own lives when it comes to authenticity and the world around us in order to, open up a way for people to be authentic? It's this buzzword that we use so often, authenticity. I feel like it's like one of those trending terms, hashtag be you, be authentic, right? It's a trending word and a trending hashtag, but authenticity is not, it's not a trend, right? Authenticity is the state of being. It's what we should be cultivating everywhere. It's how we should be operating. It's how we should be living. It should be a way of life, authenticity. And yet, in so many ways, society, right, dominant society, dominant culture, is constantly devaluing and telling us how we're not enough. And yet, we also are supposed to be authentic, right? And this openness around authenticity. And yet, how safe is it truly to be authentic? And I think when it comes to answering that question, you can look at yourself and ask yourself, how authentic are you showing up in your life? How authentic are you allowing yourself to express who you are? Do you feel safe being authentic? Do you feel as though you can operate in society, in the world around you, with your loved ones? Usually with our loved ones, it feels easier for us to be ourselves. But how many of you don't always feel safe with the people in your life? How many of you recognize that there's still parts of yourself that you hide, or that you're not being fully open about because of fear of judgment from the people who you love most, right? And then that translates as well to, our external surroundings outside our homes, outside of our core relationships, right? And how authentic are we allowing ourselves to be in those relationships? I posted a question this morning around, what does authenticity mean to you? And there was so many comments. I really appreciate you guys diving in and exploring this this question, what is it to be authentic? For me, I find that authenticity is where your personality comes into alignment and in integrity with your values, and how you operate from that place, how you allow yourself to speak, to act, to take space, right, to be present, is really about the state of wholeness. And how much do you feel whole in the different areas of your life, in your core relationships, the relationships that you have in your workplace, in your work environment, right? With acquaintances, with business partners. But most of all, how whole is your relationship with yourself, right? And there were a lot of comments that I really appreciated. For those of you who are joining me, thanks for joining me in this conversation around authenticity. Some of you may have answered that question on my page earlier this morning about what does authenticity mean to you, and I really loved a lot of these responses. Someone said not changing who you are for a new relationship or new people that you meet, and that's such a great way to think about the ways of which we might be wearing masks when we're meeting new people, the ways that we might not feel comfortable about being ourselves. And it takes courage and openness and vulnerability to allow yourself to be authentic, especially in new experiences where if you grew up, which, I can totally relate to this, in growing up in an environment where you were not often allowed to show up in spaces with public. Like I always had a parent who told me to sit down and be quiet, and behave. don't do anything. Don't do this, don't do that, and because there would be real consequences, right? And so how many of us have had those childhoods, right? I've had parents telling us how we should and shouldn't act, right? And not allowing ourselves to show up in our authentic expression of who we are. Manners is important, right? So we want to teach our children manners, but there's a difference between, helping to inform what it is to have manners and to be respectful. And it's a whole other way to look at the ways of which we are silencing, children from sharing their authentic expression, right? So coming from that sort of upbringing, that can translate over time, right? As we become adults, how comfortable are we in showing up as ourselves? There was another one here, from Michael, honoring one's truth honestly while remaining open to self-correction and growth. And I loved this part about being open and remaining open to self-correction and growth. That self-inquiry piece. How are we allowing ourselves to be aware of our feelings, how we're feeling, how we're showing up? How are we honoring or giving ourselves permission in doing so, in showing up? And that openness, right, to change, to transform, to get it wrong, but then to want to do more next time, to allow ourselves to be more open, to allow ourselves to be more seen moving forward. Another person wrote, speaking the truth at all times, even when it is painful. And I thought that was a really good response, because it takes such courage to be authentic. It takes such courage to allow yourself to express your feelings and your emotions, especially if they don't fit into the norm or if they might make someone uncomfortable. And even more so, if if your truth, right, what you feel like needs to be said, feels scary to say it, that is a huge indicator, right, of the courage that's needed, and possibly to explore what might have been activated, right, from a past experience that you're carrying or harboring that is making it difficult for you to express your truth, right? And when it comes to expressing our truth and authentically, I want to really draw home the part that speaking your truth doesn't have to be something that diminishes, devalues, or takes away from another person's experience. If you feel like speaking your truth um, has the experience of diminishing another person or creating conflict in a way where a person feels like they're devalued or they've been taken, down, it's really important to think about, is the truth that I am speaking, is that coming from a place of care, right? Is that coming from a place of integrity of who I am and what I want to communicate here? Or is it coming from the part of me that's scared, that's reacting to something because I'm feeling uncomfortable, right? It's really important to have that self-awareness, that openness to correction, and understanding, where that activation is coming from. Because when we can express our truth is really about being in a state that is loving, that presents an opportunity for a win-win situation, that presents an opportunity to not only be heard, right, but to engage the other person and to call in, right? And the way that we can show up authentically, and as I said, for me, it's about being in alignment with your values, being in alignment with your integrity of your value. If you really think about what are your values, and this is a really important thing that I think everybody should explore for themselves, or what is your number one value? And if you can't whittle it down to one, like, what are your top three? What are the three values that are really important in your life that you want to embody, that you make sure that when you are walking through life, that you want people to remember or feel about you, right? And out of those values is what you are expressing, is how you are acting, is what you are doing in alignment with those values. Really important when it comes to authenticity. And from that place of values, really, those values are shared. And those values should feel really good. They should feel good and they should be received well because our values are shared. And because it comes from that place that's in integrity with our values, the feeling of it really should be one that feels loving, that feels accepting, that feels open, that is calling in versus calling out. So this piece around authenticity and what is it to be authentic is really important to explore for yourself, because when you understand what authenticity truly means from a state of wholeness and operating from that state of wholeness, you recognize the courage that it takes to be whole. And then the question comes up about, how are we creating spaces? How are you creating space for others to be whole? How are you allowing yourself the space to be whole, right? In the ways of which we don't feel safe to be our whole selves, that's where we really need to be looking. That's really where we need to investigate further to understand, what is it that is missing, that does not feel safe, that's creating a risk right? Or feels like it's risky to show up authentically. That's the work that we need to do. And you can always figure that out by applying it to yourself first.